Hey guys, it's Vikki from She SUPs. This week on the vlog, we're going to talk about one of my most favourite epic SUP trips when I went paddleboarding in the Norwegian fjords. If you're a big fan of paddleboarding and you happen to be on Instagram, I am sure you have stumbled across the incredible photos from a company called SUP Norway. SUP Norway run multi-day paddleboarding expeditions in the Norwegian fjords. Now, I had the pleasure of paddling with SUP Norway a couple of years ago, back in 2018. Lots of you from the community have asked me about this experience and I've heard you talk about it amongst yourselves. So I thought today, on today's vlog, I would share my experiences with you and give you the true story of what it's like to paddle in the Norwegian fjords. I thought the easiest way for me to do this was if I have my laptop in front of me with all of my Norway photos, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, I'm obviously going to show you the photos on screen and give you a little bit of an insight into my experience paddling in Norway. You start the expedition out of Bergen. You fly into Bergen in Norway. It is the most beautiful little Norwegian town. It's not that little, it's quite big, but it's great for a couple of day hikes, just exploring, some great foods, there's some markets there. And I was lucky enough to meet my friend Holly before the expedition, who had actually done the expedition a week before me. So we kind of met up in Bergen and we exchanged notes, and she told me all about her experience and we just caught up, which was really, really cool. Bergen is a really Instagrammable town, so make sure you have your camera, and if you have the time, I would suggest spending a few days in Bergen because it is really, really nice to explore, and I just loved it. I loved the kind of Norwegian mythical element to it. You can go up the mountain and you can see trolls in the forest and all this kind of fun stuff. So definitely spend a couple of days in Bergen before you embark on the expedition. Also, what I really loved about Bergen, or I guess Norway in general, is as soon as I landed at the airport, I felt like I'd found my people. I landed wearing my hiking boots, I had my backpack, I had my activewear on, and just like all my adventure gear, and that's how I love to live my life. Like, that's what I love to wear every single day. And I arrived in the airport and it was the first time in my life when I looked around and everyone around me was wearing the exact same. Everyone had hiking boots on, everyone had backpacks. Everyone was ready for an adventure. So yeah, Norway is an epic place for us adventurous folk. Leaving Bergen, I got a coach. There was some incredible views on the way, beautiful mountains, so make sure you get a window seat. And I actually met some of the people going on my SUP expedition on the coach, because you have to request a certain bus stop to the Norwegian bus driver who doesn't speak much English. And thankfully I was trying to explain to him where I wanted to get off, and then these American guys were there and they were also wanting to get off at the same place. So I kind of relaxed a little bit once I knew that someone else was also wanting the bus to stop there, because I was a little bit nervous of being caught out and stuck in the middle of the Norwegian countryside and not being where I needed to be. So that first night is a great first taster, a great introduction into the amazing adventure to come. You're staying in this deep valley. All the tents are there ready for you, and Titus is there to greet you, and there'll probably be a few paddlers who have arrived a bit early. And it's just such an amazing camping experience just from day zero. You're in this valley and you're surrounded by waterfalls. Now, you might not notice it so much, like when you arrive, if you arrive in the evening or late afternoon, it's getting a bit dark. But when you wake up the next morning and you see all these waterfalls around you, your mind is just blown. Like, I'm gonna put these photos on the screen right now because it is just unreal. Kind of get a taste for that camping life. So you arrive and it's time to not think about, you know, wearing makeup anymore. This campsite is the last place where you're gonna have an actual flushing toilet, so you've gotta make the most of that luxury, and yeah, you're ready to brace the cold. So on that first night, that is when you get to meet the crew, you get a bit of a paddle briefing about what's going to happen, you get instructed on how to pack your dry bags. So dry bags are included, so Titus provides all the dry bags you need, also all the tents. So everyone packs their dry bags, gets everything ready for the morning, and has a first drink together to kind of mark the start of an amazing adventure as a group. You have a lovely wood fire and it's just really nice to get to know everyone. After that night's sleep, it's time to go in the morning. I think we car shuffled to the fjord. I can't actually remember. Maybe some people walked, I can't remember. But yeah, we made our way to the water. There was a few other people at the water, or the water's edge. There was a couple of kayaking companies that were also launching from that location, and you could see everyone getting really excited going into this majestic valley. So we loaded up our boards, we carried them, you know, maybe 2 or 3 people at a time, because the boards are so heavy once you've got all your gear on it. And we also distributed, there are different bits of kit that you share amongst the group. So for example, you might have a water container, or you might have the rubbish bag, or that kind of thing that you then share with a partner. So we distributed that, and yeah, we set off into the fjords. Now, one thing we learned as soon as we set off, and it is the #1 thing that I tell people about paddleboarding in Norway, it is not all blue skies. There's no point looking at the forecast, because the fjords are just going to do their own thing, and you can only, the greatest forecast you're going to get is looking several hundred meters ahead of you and seeing what's coming. So I remember hitting the water, finding our feet, because obviously paddleboarding on a touring paddleboard, so they're red Paddleco Voyagers that this company uses, with all your gear on, it's quite interesting to get used to. Even if you've paddleboarded heaps before, you just kind of find your feet in that initial stage. And then I remember as we were paddling out, there was this huge rain cloud coming towards us, and considering we'd all just kind of packed our stuff away, it was like, right, raincoats on, let's get ready for this rain. So you suddenly realize that you always need to have your rain jacket and your waterproof trousers easily accessible at any moment, because the weather is completely up and down. You know, it's all part of the experience. I loved paddleboarding in the rain. I still do. So just embrace it, embrace the cold, embrace, you know, experiencing all these things, and your senses are tingling, and it's just really, really, really cool. Another thing that it's worth keeping handy on your paddleboard is your camera. Now, apparently Titus did warn us that there have been hundreds, or maybe not hundreds, but a lot of GoPros and nice cameras and phones lost in the fjords, and the fjords are deep. As soon as you lose something, you're not getting that back. So I highly recommend, if you have a camera or a phone, attach it to yourself somehow, have a wrist strap, have a neck strap, whatever you need. And if you have a GoPro, make sure it's attached really tightly to your paddle or to a selfie stick or something, because you do not want to lose that in the fjords. But saying that, you also want it super, super handy, because as you turn each corner, like, there's a new incredible view. You might pass some goats or sheep on the mountainside, you might pass a waterfall, there could be dolphins at any moment. So you definitely want to keep your camera handy. But the great thing is, there's probably about, I can't remember, maybe 12 of you, 10 to 12 of you in a group, and so we all shared photos at the end. We all set up a group Dropbox, and so you don't have to fear that you're going to miss out on a great photo opportunity, because I'm sure someone else in the group has got a GoPro handy or a phone handy, and they can snap it for you. So you can kind of work as a team to make sure you capture the whole experience. So on that first day, regardless of your personal perception of your paddle experience and standard, Titus kind of assesses everyone, assesses their technique, and gives some pointers to enable you to paddle and last the whole distance. Obviously, paddling multiple days and in a range of different conditions, you really, really need good technique, but you don't have to worry about fine-tuning this before you go. Titus is there on hand as an experienced, not only SUP guide, but SUP instructor, to help you with that technique. Going this longer distance, you really, really want a good solid technique. Not, you know, if you've had a lesson with me, you will have heard me talk about hinging and not relying on your arms, but utilizing your big core muscles. And this is so, so important when you're paddling these longer distances, because you will get tired and you will have an injury with your shoulders or your arms if you're not paddling correctly. So Titus spends that first day giving tips and hints and ways to enable you to paddle full days for several days as well. So that first day is a great way to kind of just find your feet, make sure that you're paddling correctly, just to make sure that you can last the distance. Now, I wish I could say the name of all of these places where we camped and the different names of the fjords. I can't actually say these Norwegian words, so apologies to anyone who may be Norwegian and watching this, but I will try and put some names on the screen. So the first campsite was just incredible. It's a beautiful grassy campsite, so ideal for kind of your first experience. There's a nice little beach to pull up your paddleboards to, and as you approach the beach, we were all in pairs and we all took it in turns to carry our paddleboards up to the grass, and then immediately you start setting up camp. So when it comes to camping, it really helps to have some experience of setting up a tent. Obviously you do have lots of friends there to help you, but everyone needs to set up tents, and so if you are able to do it by yourself, or at least know what you're doing, it's going to help a lot. It also helps if it's raining, because there were a few days where it was pouring with rain and you need to get your tent up really quickly. So it does help to have a little bit of prior experience putting up a tent. Once your tents are up and we have unpacked our stuff and everything's ready, if you're ready first, you might go and help put up the group tarp. So we'll use paddles to make a tarp shelter and then start creating a fire to keep us all warm, because obviously in Norway it gets extremely cold even in the summer. Maybe there'll be some people setting up the tarp, there'll be some people going off to collect firewood, there'll be some people perhaps finding a nearby waterfall to collect water. So it's kind of a team effort to get camp set up so that we can settle down, have some dinner, and then ultimately get some rest before the next day. Now, one thing we did at this campsite was take a quick dip in an icy cold waterfall, and it was so cool, I was gonna say, but it was really cold. And Titus said we were gonna go for a walk and we should wear our rain jackets. And so we started heading towards the waterfall. We kind of knew where we were going. But for many of us, we then ended up taking off our rain jackets and just surrendering to this gigantic waterfall and actually getting in it. And it was great fun and thrilling, and you know, we approached it apprehensively and we came out laughing and giggling and just having a great time. So yeah, be prepared to jump in an icy cold waterfall, and I highly recommend it. It is the best experience. So day 2 of our expedition was the best weather day, I would say. It was the only day with clear blue skies and sunshine all day, and it was the only day where it was warm enough to take off your t-shirt and just paddle in a bikini or sports bra. And so we milked it and we took our time enjoying the fjords, soaking up the sunshine, viewing well, maybe there were rainbows, but I don't remember. Viewing waterfalls on the way. We also saw some dolphins, which was really magical, and it was just really nice to take it at a slow pace and, you know, paddle up against someone you'd never met and have a nice chat with them and learn about their life. So definitely a massive factor of the expedition experience is meeting people from all around the world that come to this one place for this incredible experience, and because of their love of paddleboarding. So you meet lots of like-minded people, and it's really nice just to have a chat while you're paddling through these epic locations. So after a beautiful sunny day, we finally reached our next campsite. What we're doing in Norway is we're wild camping. So there is no facilities there. There are no like tent pitches. You basically turn up at these sites, you kind of locate a suitable area for your tent. You try and look for a flat area with not too many tree roots and too many rocks, but also you want a good view. Well, at least that's what I did. So I wanted to make sure that I had a good view when I woke up in the morning, and yeah, and then you pitch a tent there. I'm sure a lot of you are asking what happens with the toilet situation. So Titus explains all of this on the first day, but basically you are going for nature number 1s and number 2s. You want to do so away from any water source, because you are collecting water from any freshwater streams or waterfalls nearby. So you want to make sure you're doing your business away from them. Yeah, you basically get used to digging a little hole, going off by yourself. Yeah, finding a good nature toilet. So when it comes to food, most of the time we were eating for dinner and for breakfast these incredible dehydrated meals, and these dehydrated meals were hands down some of the best that I've ever eaten. They are by, I think it was a Swedish company or a Norwegian company, I can't remember. You have like traditional Nordic food in these dehydrated meals. So we had kind of reindeer meatballs or stuff like that. They were so good. I'm sure these dehydrated meals taste better simply being in the fjords, but I think if I was to eat one now, I would also say they're some of the best dehydrated meals that I've ever tasted. So that was kind of dinner and breakfast. So breakfast, I think it was normally like porridge or something, and then breakfast would be dinner would be like a stew or meatballs or curry or something. For lunch, Titus surprised us every day with lots of different things that he managed to pull out of his bag like Mary Poppins. And this one day we had fresh prawns. So one thing you will learn, if you don't know already, is how to start a fire, because we're making fires every day when we get to camp. They become the central point of camp. It's where everyone's huddling around to try and keep warm. So if you've always wanted to try your hand at making a fire and using a flint and all that kind of stuff, you will definitely have the opportunity while you're in Norway. At this campsite, this is when the weather turned. I think it was maybe that evening it started to rain, and then it continued to rain for the following 24 plus hours. It was very exciting at first, but obviously that next morning we had to put our tents down in the rain. We had to commence paddleboarding in the rain, paddle all day in the rain, get to our next camp spot in the rain, unpack and put up our tents in the rain. And it's safe to say after 24 hours of solid rain, we were drenched. But we also had some fun in the process. So starting from the morning when we left our first camp, we decided that, you know, it was bucketing with rain, all of our stuff was wet, we might as well go for a swim in the fjords. So we went swimming in the rain in these freezing cold fjords. But again, it was just one of those bucket list life experiences that I would highly recommend to everyone. It was so much fun. So we thought, well, we're wet anyway, we might as well, so we did. Then paddling in the rain, the clouds were really low and you just see kind of glimpses of the incredible walls of the fjord. It was like really stormy and it felt like you were in a movie, and it was just a very grey day. It doesn't look great on the pictures, but it was heaps of fun. It was really good for kind of everyone rallying together and trying to support each other through quite a difficult day. We had not only heavy rain all day, but we also had some nice headwinds that made paddling a challenge, and we had a fairly long distance to cover that day as well. But our destination was definitely worth it. So our destination was this tiny little Norwegian village called Andredal. And its nickname is the Goat Village because it's where they have heaps of goats. You'll see them all over the mountainside, but also it's where you can get amazing goat products, including goat's cheese, goat's chocolate, goat's pizza, and kind of goat everything. So when we got there, as I mentioned, it was pouring with rain. So the first thing we wanted to do was just get dry and find somewhere warm, but we needed to put up our tents. So we put up first of all the group tarp, and we used that as a shelter just while we could shovel in some lunch, get some food. And then we, one by one, we made or we put up our tents under the tarp so we could try and keep our tents as dry as possible, but they were actually still wet from the morning and the previous night. So we just at least wanted to keep the inside dry. We put up our tents under the tarp, and then we moved them out into the soggy grass and kind of set them up strategically around our little campsite. This was a camp that thankfully does have a hot shower. So once all the tents were up, we kind of took it in turns to have these really short showers, but it was dreamy after we'd been wet for what felt like an eternity. But I must add, I can't really complain because whilst we did have rain for over 24 hours and we got soaked through, my friend Holly, who I mentioned earlier, who went on the expedition the week before, she had had rain like that every single day of the expedition. And apparently it's quite rare to get it every single day. Most tours normally get some rain, but Holly's tour got it every single day, and she was talking about how she just never dried and she was soaked the whole time. So thankfully we didn't have that, and we just got a small taste of it on that kind of those middle couple of days during the expedition. So I won't spoil these surprises from Andredal, but I would say you'll have a really great time there. We had some delicious food that night. I recommend going for what Titus recommends. So like try the local dishes. They sound really weird and really odd, but hey, when in Norway, you should try these things. So the next day, thankfully, the sun had come out and we could finally set off for another day on the fjords and finally get a little bit dry. And so we packed up our stuff and we headed out into the fjords and had another really nice day, a lot more relaxing than the previous day. So a nice relaxing paddle where we could just enjoy the environment again, look around us, and not worrying so much about the elements and about the wind and all of that kind of jazz. That day we stopped for a really cool lunch. We made a bonfire or a fire. We roasted sausages on sticks like little Boy Scouts, had sausages and cheese and breads and stuff like that for lunch. And I remember sat in that area and we were looking out over the water and we could see a seal playing around in the water. And yeah, it was just a really nice lunch spot for that day. So paddling on, we then headed on to our next campsite. Our next campsite, I've lost track of how many days this was, but basically this next campsite was back to the first campsite that we were at before. So we returned to the one which I mentioned was really grassy and had this beautiful waterfall, and it was really nice coming back to such a beautiful campsite and somewhere that already felt like home because we'd been there before. So we were able to set up nice and quickly. We all knew the drill by then. We enjoyed a really beautiful kind of final night in the fjords. A few people tried fishing and we went paddling that night. Actually, we went paddling with head torches and we just kind of made the most of our final night in the fjords. So that final trip back to our start point, from that final campsite back to civilization basically, it was painful in the sense that the fjords gave us such a beautiful vista to look out on, a beautiful view. It was a stunning day. It wasn't quite as warm as the first day, but at least we had blue skies. And so every corner we turned was just like another incredibly Instagrammable picture. We kind of took our time because we really didn't want the experience to end. So yeah, we slowly headed back to the beginning and tried to soak in as much as possible of the incredible surroundings. And then we were back, and that was the end of our expedition. So a few people, I think we headed straight on from that. We picked up the coach again that same day. Some people I think stayed an extra night in that initial base camp. But yeah, it was the most incredible experience. We were all grateful for hot showers again, because I remember, I think I got on the coach straight away and I arrived back in Bergen in civilization and I just felt super stinky and super wild, my wild hair and all that kind of jazz, and I just missed the fjords so much. So one of the things that my She SUPs ladies who I was paddling with this week were asking me about when it comes to SUP Norway is they were asking about your paddle ability and how much you need to paddle beforehand and that kind of thing. I would say you are paddling a full day most of the time. Like, it's not solid, you do have lots of breaks and it's at a really slow pace. So some paddle experience would be, I would say, over 2 hours would be recommended. I would say a solid amount of fitness, because you have to carry the boards with all their gear and that kind of thing. But ultimately, if you're just resilient, if you're resilient and positive and believe in yourself that you can do it, I am sure that anyone in the She SUPs community can do this experience. So if you would like to reach out and have some support or perhaps do some training before going to SUP Norway, please get in touch and I would very happily help set you up a little training plan, or we can just work on building up your SUP confidence to deal with such an amazing multi-day expedition. Similarly, I would also say not only to kind of practice the longer distances and you know, more time on your feet on your paddleboard, but also you kind of do want to be quite comfortable with boat weight. One thing that I didn't kind of realize when I, you know, looked at the photos of SUP Norway and that kind of thing, is there are a lot of tourist boats that go past, and there are these big cruises that cruise through the fjords, and they have a huge amount of boat wake. So most of the time, apart from when it's a strong wind, the fjords are pretty flat. You might get quite a few waves when you've got a really strong wind, and then you also get these nice big waves that come off the back of the boats. Now, in most of those scenarios, you can just kind of go down onto your knees, or if you fall, you're just going to fall onto your gear, so that's completely fine. But it does help to be confident and trust your board and trust your ability. So get used to going over boat wake and you will be absolutely fine. On that first day, we did have someone fall in within the first 2 hours, so don't fear, it is perfectly normal. It is very cold, so try to avoid it, but yes, other people do fall in. So if you occasionally fall off a SUP, I wouldn't recommend it when you're in the Norwegian fjords, but people have done it before. So I've just found on my phone my actual journal from SUP Norway. So I know a few of you were also asking me about the length of the days in terms of kilometers. So what can I see here? On that first day, we paddled between 6 to 8 kilometers. I know that's not very specific, but I don't think I was really tracking it. So I was just kind of going with what other people kind of said. The next day we paddled 14 kilometers. The next day was about 8 kilometers. The next day, I think it was 17 kilometers. The final day, another 8 kilometers. Don't be intimidated by something like 17 because it's really doable with the amount of breaks that you have, and you can just stop at any time. You can lower to your knees at any time, and you can just take it easy. It's such a slow pace, so I'm sure everyone would be fine to do it. So I hope you enjoyed recapping my SUP Norway experience with me. I hope the photos have inspired, have encouraged you to head over and explore Norway for yourself. I highly, highly recommend it. Don't forget, if you want to hear more from She SUPs, if you want to hear more from me, my SUP experiences, and also talk about more SUP gear, check out www.shesups.com.au. Subscribe to this channel. I post vlogs every Wednesday. And yeah, come say hi at She SUPs Instagram as well, at SheSups_. Have a really good week, guys. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.